What if one of the biggest financial changes for older Americans this year had nothing to do with inflation, and everything to do with knowing where to look? What if thousands of dollars were already available to millions of retirees? Yet many would never claim a single dollar simply because no one ever explained the rules in plain English. And what if one overlooked deadline could interrupt the way your monthly Social Security payment reaches you, not because your benefits ended, but because the payment system itself quietly changed? If you're receiving Social Security, or someone you love is, stay with me for the next few minutes. Because this year, 3 important financial updates are affecting retirees across the country. One involves how benefits are delivered. Another could reduce the amount of federal tax many older Americans pay. And the third changes how Medicare Part D limits prescription drug costs for many beneficiaries. These aren't complicated legal theories or financial tricks. They're practical changes that may affect how retirees receive benefits, manage taxes, and budget for healthcare. I'm Walter Barron, a state-bar licensed attorney, and for more than 15 years I've helped families protect their retirement savings, preserve their estates, and understand government benefit programs that often seem intentionally difficult to navigate. My job has never been about finding loopholes. It's about helping people understand the rules before those rules become expensive mistakes. Today we're going through all 3 updates one by one in plain English with the practical steps that matter most. Let's begin with the change that's the most timeline sensitive. For decades, millions of Americans received their Social Security benefits the same way every month, a paper check arriving in the mailbox. For many retirees, that routine became part of life. It was familiar. It felt dependable. And after years of doing things one way, there was little reason to imagine it would ever change. But over the past several years, federal agencies have steadily expanded the use of electronic payments for government benefits. The goal has been straightforward: reduce fraud, improve payment security, and lower administrative costs. If your benefits are already deposited directly into your bank account each month, this transition likely won't affect your daily routine. Your payment continues arriving electronically, just as it always has. But for the relatively small group of beneficiaries who still rely on mailed paper checks, this shift deserves attention. Paper checks create vulnerabilities that electronic deposits simply don't have. A check can be delayed. It can be misplaced. In some unfortunate cases, it can even be stolen before it ever reaches the person it was intended for. Electronic deposits remove much of that risk by sending benefits directly to a verified account without relying on the mail system. That is one of the primary reasons federal agencies have spent years encouraging beneficiaries to move away from paper payments. So what should you actually do? Fortunately, the process is simpler than many people expect. Most retirees choose standard direct deposit. That means your monthly Social Security payment goes directly into your checking or savings account without any extra steps each month. If you already use a bank account, you can generally update or confirm your payment information through your personal Social Security account online, by contacting the Social Security Administration, or by working directly with your financial institution. But what if you don't have a traditional bank account? That's where many people assume they have no options. In reality, another alternative exists. The federal government also offers the Direct Express card program, which allows eligible beneficiaries to receive Social Security payments electronically on a prepaid debit card. Each month, benefits are loaded automatically onto the card, allowing recipients to make purchases, withdraw cash, or pay bills much like any standard debit card. For retirees who prefer not to open a conventional bank account, this option can provide a straightforward way to continue receiving benefits electronically. Now let's address something I hear almost every week. I've always preferred paper checks. And I understand why. Holding a physical check can feel more tangible, more familiar, more secure simply because it's the way things have always been done. But the reality is that paper checks carry risks that many retirees never had to think about decades ago. Mail theft has become increasingly common in many communities. Identity fraud has become more sophisticated. And replacing a missing government check can sometimes take weeks, creating unnecessary financial stress while waiting for the issue to be resolved. Electronic deposits largely eliminate that uncertainty. Instead of wondering whether today's mail includes your benefit, the money simply appears in your account on the scheduled payment date. No mailbox. No delivery delay. No concern about whether the envelope made it safely across town. That's why financial professionals generally recommend making the transition before it becomes urgent rather than waiting until a payment problem forces the issue. Taking care of it while everything is working normally is almost always easier than trying to solve it after something goes wrong. Now, let's move to the second update. This one has nothing to do with how your money arrives. Instead, it may affect how much of your retirement income is exposed to federal income tax. Tax law is rarely anyone's favorite subject. Most retirees don't spend evenings reading legislative updates or IRS guidance, and understandably so. But every once in a while, a change appears that deserves attention simply because it has the potential to reduce taxable income for many older Americans. Recent federal legislation introduced an additional tax deduction designed specifically for qualifying seniors. While eligibility depends on several factors including age, filing status, and income, the purpose is straightforward: allow eligible older taxpayers to reduce the amount of income subject to federal taxation. For many retirees, deductions like this don't necessarily create new income. Instead, they reduce the amount of existing income that's taxed. That distinction matters. Reducing taxable income can sometimes lower an overall tax bill or increase a refund depending on an individual's complete financial situation. For married couples filing jointly, the impact may be even larger because both spouses may qualify if each meets the age requirements. Of course, deductions are rarely unlimited. Like many tax provisions, eligibility phases out as income increases. That means some retirees may receive the full benefit, while others receive only a partial deduction or none at all depending on their adjusted income for the year. And that's exactly why planning matters. Many retirees receive income from several different sources: Social Security benefits, traditional pensions, required withdrawals from retirement accounts, investment income, occasionally proceeds from selling property or other assets. Individually, none of these may seem significant, but together they determine where your total income falls under current tax rules. Sometimes, simply adjusting the timing of a retirement account withdrawal or spreading income across multiple tax years can help preserve deductions that might otherwise be reduced. The important point isn't that everyone should change their financial strategy. It's that understanding the rules before filing taxes gives you options that often disappear once the return has already been submitted. Now let's turn to the third change, because for many retirees, this one could have the biggest impact on monthly expenses. For years, one of the greatest frustrations for Medicare beneficiaries wasn't just the rising cost of prescription drugs, it was the uncertainty. Some medications cost only a few dollars each month. Others, especially prescriptions used to treat cancer, autoimmune diseases, or rare medical conditions, could cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars every time they were filled. Many seniors found themselves asking the same question over and over again: when will these costs finally stop? For a long time, there wasn't a simple answer. Today, there is. Under the current Medicare Part D structure, annual out-pocket spending for covered prescription drugs is now limited by a maximum cap that adjusts over time. For 2026, that cap is expected to be approximately $2,100 for covered medications. Why does that matter? Because once your own eligible out-pocket costs reach that limit during the year, your Medicare drug plan generally covers the remaining cost of your covered prescriptions for the rest of that calendar year. Think about what that means in practical terms. Imagine someone taking an expensive specialty medication that previously required hundreds of dollars every month. Instead of continuing to pay throughout the year with no predictable finish line, those costs now build toward a defined ceiling. Once that ceiling is reached, covered medications no longer continue generating additional out-pocket costs for the remainder of the year. For retirees managing chronic illnesses, this change introduces something many families haven't had before: predictability. Instead of wondering whether another refill will force difficult financial decisions, they can better estimate their annual health care expenses and budget with greater confidence. Now, there's one important point that often creates confusion. The annual cap applies to covered prescription drug costs under Medicare Part D. It does not include your monthly Part D premium. Premiums continue separately. The cap focuses on what you personally spend for eligible covered medications through deductibles, co-payments, and co-insurance. Understanding that distinction helps prevent unpleasant surprises later in the year. But there's another program that deserves just as much attention, and surprisingly few eligible retirees ever apply for it. It's called Extra Help, sometimes referred to as the low-income subsidy. If you've never heard of it, you're certainly not alone. Every year, countless seniors qualify for assistance yet never submit an application because they simply assume their income is too high. That assumption can become expensive. Extra Help is designed to reduce many of the prescription drug costs faced by Medicare beneficiaries with limited financial resources. Depending on individual circumstances, it may lower premiums, deductibles, and co-payments while working alongside the Medicare drug benefit itself. For some retirees, the savings can be substantial. The application process is handled through the Social Security Administration, and many people are surprised to learn that qualification standards have expanded compared to years past. Someone who didn't qualify several years ago may qualify today. Someone who never bothered applying because a friend told them they earned too much may actually be eligible. That's why it's usually worth checking instead of guessing. The application costs nothing. Finding out whether you qualify costs nothing. But never applying could cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars over the course of a year. Now let's put all three of today's changes together. Because individually, each one matters. Taken together, they form a simple financial checklist that every Social Security recipient should consider this year. First, make sure your Social Security payment method is current. If you're already receiving benefits electronically, you're probably in good shape. If you or someone close to you still depends on a paper check, now is the time to explore electronic payment options before a future transition creates unnecessary complications. Second, don't overlook available tax deductions simply because you've never heard about them before. Tax law changes frequently, and many retirees continue filing exactly the same way every year without realizing new provisions may now apply to them. Whether you prepare your own return or work with a tax professional, asking this simple question can make a meaningful difference. Are there any senior minus specific deductions available for my situation this year? Sometimes that conversation alone can uncover savings that would otherwise have been missed. Third, review your Medicare prescription coverage before you assume rising drug costs are unavoidable. Understand how your annual out minus pocket limit works. Find out whether extra help might apply to your situation. And if you're taking expensive medications, don't wait until later in the year to understand your coverage. Knowing the rules before you need them is always easier than trying to learn them during a medical emergency. One thing I've learned after years of helping families is that financial security in retirement rarely comes from one enormous decision. More often, it comes from dozens of small decisions made at the right time. Updating a payment method before there's a problem. Claiming a deduction before the filing deadline passes. Submitting one application that reduces prescription costs for years to come. None of those decisions feels dramatic in the moment, but together they can protect thousands of dollars that you've already earned. And perhaps that's the most important point of today's discussion. These programs aren't special favors. They're not prizes. They're benefits created under existing law for people who qualify. The challenge isn't usually eligibility. The challenge is awareness. Most retirees don't lose money because they made a terrible financial decision. They lose money because no one ever told them what questions to ask. That's exactly why I continue making these videos. Because complicated government programs become far less intimidating once they're translated into plain English. So before we finish, here's the 3- step checklist I'd encourage every retiree to complete. Confirm how your Social Security benefits are being delivered. Review your upcoming tax return for any senior minus related deductions that may apply. And if you're enrolled in Medicare Part D, take a few minutes to understand your prescription drug costs and whether programs like Extra Help could reduce them even further. None of those steps takes very long, but completing them could make a meaningful difference to your finances over the coming year. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me. If you found today's breakdown helpful, consider sharing it with a parent, a neighbor, or a friend who's receiving Social Security. There's a good chance at least one of these updates could help them too. And if you'd like more straightforward explanations of retirement benefits, Medicare, taxes, and estate planning, I'll be back with another update soon.